All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Orick, here with my partner, Sean Williams. How you doing tonight, Sean?
Okay, it froze on me. Are we good?
Yeah, it should. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay. Just a little patience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. God, I miss playing. Anyway,
You can
I'm
have.
doing good.
So basically, all right, you're still there. Okay, just making sure you didn't freeze on me
Yeah,
again.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Uh,
Uh, basically, the um the question I've got tonight, it like the show's title is patience because we're going to have a little patience when it comes to this training camp. Camp opened on Tuesday, but they have yet to have a practice because they are doing COVID protocols where they've been testing these guys every day. And they're coming in waves, almost like alphabetical order, A through L, L through Z. They go in to get tested, coaches and everybody. Gail Benson's booked basically, she says it's 4 floors, but basically nobody else is in there. The entire Lowe's hotel to create the bubble. They take buses, get in the buses, go from the hotel, which is downtown, to the practice facility. There's no media access. They have teleconferences that the reporters ask questions. So I mean, it's oh my brother. Here we go. Um, I sent him a speed racer meme or a speed racer little cartoon just before we were on air. That it was a stupid thing. Let me just say it. You know what this is from, right? This is right before he punched him in the gut and knocks him out, which my brother can relate to because I've done that to him. But I didn't knock him out when I punched him. But anyway,
so you're one of those big brother bullies then.
I'm as a friend of mine, Sean Castrillo, once quoted, "I'm the evil older brother." So
Hey, I've got one of those, so I
so
can understand. And actually, I have an older brother, and I am an older brother, so it puts me in kind of a weird dynamic in that.
so, but
Wait a minute, before we get started,
okay,
I got a big announcement to make. And this is something that's very um people, for their own selfish reasons, people always have their favorite quarterback, their favorite running back, their favorite wide receiver. To me, and for my own personal reasons, and anyone that knows me knows what those reasons are. Um, my favorite Saints running back of all times, bar none, was Kyrie Robinson. Uh, and like I said, I have my reasons for that. Uh, it blows me away to be able to sit here and tell you guys that next Tuesday night, our very special guest on Under the Dome is going to be none other than number 29 on the program. Mr. Kyrie Robinson is going to join us next Tuesday night. So y'all make sure and join us for that. That's I'm gonna be sitting here giddy, and I'm gonna be a mark, and it's gonna be awesome.
explain.
I had the pleasure of getting to meet Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say maybe 2013. It was when I was really.
Oh, you got to be kidding me! He's about to tell the story where he was in all the treatments for his cancer, and he got to meet Kyrie Robinson while he was going through all the treatments. Oh, there he is. He's back. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay. I was just getting ready to say, just as you were getting ready to talk about how you met him, it cut off. So go ahead.
It blows me away that I kind of feel like I got to know the guy. He came to see me, he came to Monroe and did an autograph signing. He and Junior Gillette, and I got to meet the both of them, and they were nothing but awesome to me. And being able to have him here on the show is going to absolutely just be something that beyond anything that I could have ever hoped for.
Well, and I was getting ready to say too, you were also in your treatment for cancer, correct? When you got to meet those two. Oh, you got to be kidding me. Sean's got to spring for the good data plan. And he's back. Yeah, everybody's giving you advice. Sean, you need an upgraded provider. Keeps cutting you off.
Yeah, I need to find a better spot, like out there on the bayou or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But I was getting ready to say you were in either during your treatments for cancer or had just recovered from it when you got to meet Kyrie as well. And
as memory serves me, I think that I was still in the midst of my my chemo treatments when I got to meet those guys.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Kyrie was awesome. And there was never a time that I reached out to him that he didn't remember me. Last night, I sent him a message and I said, "Do you remember me?" And he said, "Of course I remember you." So that's pretty awesome. And it's great when you can love a team. You can have a passion for a team, but when that passion for your team is kind of translated and that team shows that they care about you, that goes to the next level. And there's a lot of people that won't understand what I'm trying to say there, but there were several players, Kyrie, Roman Harper, Malcolm Jenkins, that took the time to inquire how my treatment was going and what have you.
Oh man, Shawnee Shawn. And he's back again.
Yeah. I hope you didn't get that last
no, I didn't
3
get
syllables that I said.
No, you just got to get on that dial-up connection. So
my mom would be so disappointed at that last 3 syllables. But anyway, Kyrie is going to be our guest on next week, and hopefully the signal will be much better then.
Okay. All right. So anyway, what I had sent right before we went on the air, I read a column, and I feel stupider having read this. A guy posts on Twitter, which is a cesspool of bad opinions. It really is. But anyway, he writes the following. This is a Wall Street Journal piece too, which is shocking. Sales of mega pickups, which have basically been, and he wrote these words, deliberately designed to intimidate and kill pedestrians, are booming. And basically what he's talking about are like an F-150, F-250s, F-350s, the King Ranches, the dually diesels from GMC, a Denali, any, Dodge trucks. All the trucks now have these huge grills and huge front ends. Okay. Well, you know what? Who cares? So I read it purely for the ratios. I wanted to see these comments that people were putting. And these comments were hilarious because it just everything questioning this dude's manhood to I'm sorry a Prius hurt you that way, that kind of stuff. So I sat there and thought about it, and I said, you know what? I'm a cartoon. Here he goes again. He's going to be so mad. I'm a cartoon fan. Okay. I always have been. All right. You back? I'm a cartoon.
Yeah.
I say I'm a cartoon fan. Always have been. My favorite all-time cartoon is Johnny Quest. Bar none. Greatest cartoon ever made. Bar none. The original Johnny Quest from the 60s.
No, for me, it's Calvin and Hobbes.
Well, that's a comic strip. They never really made a cartoon out of that. But I'm talking about just cartoons. All right. I know the later generations like Family Guy and all those things, but Johnny Quest was the greatest. I was also a fan of early Japanese. Before it became really anime, I was into early Japanese cartoons like Speed Racer and Star Blazers, also known as Battleship Yamato cartoons. All right. Well, anyone that's ever watched Speed Racer knows the mammoth car, right? You've seen Speed Racer? You remember the mammoth car?
Yeah.
The big giant thing made of gold that they were going to they were shipping.
Yeah.
They were running out of the country in a race. They made a car out of gold. So that's how they were going to smuggle this thing out. Look at this. Here he goes again. He'll be right back. It's because he doesn't have. I bet he doesn't have Wi-Fi. Johnny Quest was the shit. You better believe it, Anna. Johnny Quest was awesome. I mean, how many people in Johnny Quest got shot? Just that was the best part of Quest because someone's going to die in this episode. Usually the bad guy, but someone's going to die. All right. So anyway. So I'm thinking, I pulled up the mammoth car, and you remember in the beginning of the mammoth car episode, I just sent this to my brother right before we were on the air. The beginning of the mammoth car episode, when the car starts wiping out all the competition by knocking them off the road and everything else, I'm like, that's what this guy thinks these mega trucks are. He thinks it's the mammoth car. And they had that. I said, look, I found the author of the piece. He's the guy in the little bubble Jetsons car that starts bouncing and shaking because, the mammoth car is next to him and the exhaust blows him into the side of the mountain. He doesn't even touch it, just the exhaust alone. So anyway, that was my demented humor at work. But yeah. Hey, I paid.
That doesn't even scratch the surface of your demented humor.
That is true. That is true. That is true. So
I wish everybody that watched this program, I wish everybody that watches this program would get the opportunity to sit down and drink a beer and have a meal with Alan just one time. They would understand this show so much better.
Yes. Yeah, they probably would. They probably would because you just gotta go through my taste of stuff. You start looking around going, yeah, that explains it. There he goes again. Oh man, I should have named this episode Here We Go Again. He is going to be livid. Is it dial up?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Some nights it works fantastic. Other nights, like tonight, it works like shit. Hopefully, this is a precursor that the next couple of shows will be go off without a hitch. And I shouldn't have said that out loud, but you know.
Well, I hope so. So
yeah,
all right.
because this happens when we have an actual live guest. I'm going to be throwing furniture, and I don't have that much furniture to throw, so that's really going to be a downer.
As long as you don't go full Antonio Brown and start throwing her out the window, aiming for the pool or something.
No, because there's wasps out the window. I'm deathly allergic to wasps, so we're not going to invite that that problem into the domicile here.
Okay, so
CG. Does it shock you that? And I this is completely off the cuff. Something that I read on my updates earlier. That does it shock you that no team is willing to take a rider on Antonio Brown?
Well, he just got suspended 8 games, which they knew that was going to happen. But no, it's not because of the things. If Bill Belichick cuts you, okay, Bill Belichick can't deal with you. That's pretty much a big red flag. Here he goes again. A big red flag not to mess with this guy. So that's why it doesn't shock me Antonio Brown is gone. We'll try it this way and see if this
I just talked about Steve Jobs' mother, so
you accuse Steve Jobs' parents of never being married?
Well, I kind of insinuated that their family tree never forked, if that's what you mean.
There you go. All right, so what I was going to say was that if Bill Belichick gives up on you, then that pretty much
says a lot.
Fate. Yeah, that seals your fate. And when the Saints brought him in and specifically told him, do not bring an entourage. Well, they brought an entourage. He brought an entourage and a video camera. And they're like, then you're no help. You're not going to be a help to anybody.
You know, at a certain point, teams are going to realize that these players, there are some that are redeemable, and I'll give you that. But at some point, teams reach that line in the sand where they say, you know what, you are not worth the trouble that you're going to bring to our organization. And
exactly.
I truly believe that's where Antonio Brown is. And for a long time, I felt the same way about Terrell Owens. I felt the same way about Dez.
Well, you know, you have to have a special kind of locker room to handle personalities like Dez, like Terrell Owens. Yeah. And Antonio Brown shows that it doesn't matter what kind of locker room you have. He is just going to be a mess. So that's why I'm not surprised.
You have to have a locker room that's going to what's the word I'm looking for? Not for lack of a better term, maybe dictate a locker room that's going to tell you, look, son, I appreciate what you're bringing to the party, but if you're not about the team, then you have no place here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what it is. You're playing on a team that is the most elite athletes in the world, and Antonio Brown is prime proof. You can be the most talented man in the world at what you do, and if you put yourself out there on that island by yourself, you're not going to do anybody any good.
No. Sean. Well, and I think Antonio Brown has just alienated so many people that no one wants to deal with it. Nobody wants to deal with it. 8-game suspension. Once you get the 8-game suspension, there's just no going back. You're done. You're done.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Nobody's going to spend the money to have you on the payroll for half of the season that you're not going to do anything but click a few shutters. They're just not going to do that.
Well, you can't. It's not. He's not reliable at this point. But what's interesting to me is you still have Jadeveon Clowney out there. You still have Logan Ryan out there. You still have some talented players, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest in these guys. They keep talking about how Clowney's narrowed it down to the Saints in Dallas, for example, but there's never really been any official statement from any organization about this. It's really just internet rumors. The Saints went and cut 10 players because instead of bringing 90 into camp, which is what they normally do, under the new rules, they're only going to bring 80 to camp. So what we saw basically is a lot of no names get cut. Only 2 players of any kind of notoriety with the Saints got cut. They cut Tommy Lee Lewis and they cut Taylor Stallworth. Taylor Stallworth was somewhat of a surprise, but it looks like they're going to give these undrafted guys a shot at being Shy Tuttle. One of them they're not bringing, though, is that guy Cumberlander. He was one of the ones they cut. And they brought in a linebacker because Kiko Alonzo starts out the season on the physically unable to perform list, which I'm not surprised. He's tore his ACL in the middle of the Vikings playoff game. That was January. It's now roughly 8 months later, almost 8 months later, to the day of the surgery. So I'm not surprised he's on the PUP list. So they brought in Nigel Bradham, who was a player that I liked when free agency started back in February. I thought he was he's an older linebacker, but he can play the weak and the strong side. Still has speed, can still cover. Is a guy who now it's like Chris Collinsworth. Here's a guy, but he is a guy that can do some stuff for you still, even though he's in his 30s, can do stuff for you and be a starter until Zach Braun is ready. And that's all we can ask at this point.
Well, I mean, right now, you've drafted Zach Braun. Obviously, coming out of college, he's not NFL ready. And, to a large extent, you're bringing Nigel Bradham in basically at the same level that Demario Davis was at when we brought him in.
Pretty much.
Make that aluminum foil hat.
Oh, here you go. And you'll get a few extra bars. You gotta go total Alex Jones. Have it like the big hat with the big point on the top. I
don't even have any aluminum foil, man.
What?
Anyway,
all right.
You're bringing Nigel Bradham in at a point similar to what Demario Davis was when you brought him in. And Demario Davis stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park. And you're kind of expecting. I
said Demario Davis is a much younger linebacker too. That you brought him really in to be a starter. I don't think you're bringing Bradham in to be a starter. Otherwise, you would have signed him right out of the gate. I think you're bringing him more to be a transitional guy.
An insurance policy until Braun is ready.
Exactly. I mean, that was the big concern that Saints fans I had too, that there really was no depth behind Davis And really, that's it because you think about you know Alonzo and Anzalone both fight injuries, and Craig Robertson
Yeah.
is a guy that you want primarily a special teams guy. He can come in and play a game or two for you, but you don't want him there for 16 games starting. He's just too limited now. And then after that, you got really unknowns. You got Caden Ellis, who looked good in preseason last year, but got hurt. So and then you've got undrafted free agents, and that's a big risk. So you would have
It
had
is.
you would have to throw in your rookie way too early, risk a lot of mistakes. I mean, we brought Stephon Anthony back last year. That's how thin our linebacking core was, and we actually had to
There's
start
prob
Stephon Anthony in some games.
there's probably no more important uh part of the defense than the linebackers, because they cover the backs of the defensive line and they cut off the intermediaries for the secondary. So
Mhm.
uh, it's very, very important that you have talented guys out there doing that.
And where were teams getting the most success running the football against the Saints? Not that they had much, but they got the most success coming out running wide outside the numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where Dalvin Cook had success early in the Vikings playoff game. That's where the 49ers were finding a lot of success running wide to the outside because the front four was so good in the inside, taking away the cutbacks and the inside lanes. You've got to run to the wide side. And if you run to Demario Davis's side, you probably can get run down. But if you ran to the strong side or where Demario Davis was not, that's where you got the most success because you're running the people who were normally on that side of the field were Kiko Alonzo at one point, Craig Robertson was there, AJ Klein was
Yeah.
there. The cornerback.
And see
the cor-
I'm sorry to interrupt. That in and of itself is the problem for the Saints, because it's always, for the last couple of years, it's always been Demario Davis, the Rock, and whoever else we could put out there. And it doesn't need to be that. It needs to be someone that they can depend on to do the job and to make the stops.
Well, and they've tried, and that's the thing. We've brought in a lot of linebackers over the years trying to get the piece. We've drafted guys, and unfortunately, the guys we draft get hurt, and the free agents that we bring in just have not panned out like Demario Davis. Demario Davis is one of the few free agents at linebacker that we brought in, and this goes back a good 30 years, one of the few linebackers that we brought in as a free agent that actually panned out. You can pretty much count them on one hand. I mean, I'm going to give
I would consider that to be a category of two, and that's both of them come from the New York Jets, Jonathan Vilma and Demario Davis.
And I'm going to say, AJ Klein I would put as not a bust, but not a great player.
AJ Klein was not the player that they thought they were getting when they traded or they brought him in. That's not his fault. That's not a slant on him. It's just there's the job to do.
In my estimation, I kind of compare AJ Klein to Scott Shanley. He was a lot like Scott Shanley, not a spectacular linebacker, but a smart linebacker who put himself in good positions to make the tackles. They said CG is asking Lofton came from the Jets. No, he came from the Falcons. In fact, when the Saints beat the Falcons in 2013 on opening day, Lofton said, "This is why I came to the Saints, because of this, to watch Drew Brees." Yeah, Fajita's another one. Scott Fajita is a good linebacker.
Kenny Vaccaro interception in the end zone as time run out.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, you start thinking about some of the other guys to know. Ellerby, we brought in what was that linebacker from Seattle. He had one play in all the years he was here, like 2 or 3 years. I can't think of his name on top of my head. That's how little he had an interception in the end zone against the Falcons, I think. But that
Browner.
was not Browner. No, Browner was a cornerback. No, it's a linebacker. But I can't think of who he is. Somebody will put his name up in a second. Curtis Lofton, he was only good for a year. It's Calvin. I didn't realize who CG was. It's Calvin. I got you. Well, Calvin's got a look. I recognize his avatar normally too, even if I don't. Yeah, but I see Calvin Griffin. There we go. I didn't realize that's who you were. Sorry, Calvin. But
you got to identify, brother.
That's right. But yeah, I mean,
Spartan.
You go through the guys they brought in, and they've just been terrible. And that goes even before Sean Payton. When you start looking at the linebackers Jim Haslett brought in, I mean, that was a mess. Jim Mora, Mike Ditka drafted one good linebacker his whole year, all his years here, and that was Winford Tubbs. Actually, I don't think Mike Ditka drafted him. I think Mora drafted him at the very end. But, you look at Andre Royal, he never even played for us. All he did was beat the tight end, Cam Cleveland. Oh, here he goes again. We've been doing good for too long. He's the one that did the that beat Cam Cleveland in the ankle for the hazing incident. There he goes. You remember Andre Royal? He was a linebacker we got from Carolina. They had the big hazing incident in lacrosse, one of the last years in lacrosse, and he had the bag of coins he'd been collecting and whacked Cam Cleveland, the tight end, in the eye, dislocated the eye, then hit him in the ankle that was hurt. So that's the kind of garbage that we used to bring in. And ironically, Andre Royal went to the Colts. We traded him for a tight end, Stuckler, I think his name was Scott Stuckler. And they got a good.
And the guy we brought in from Dallas.
The guy who never played it down. He tore his ACL. He was over the hill when we brought him in. There he goes again. He was over the hill when we brought him in. Oh, yeah, Laurinaitis. That's another one. Another guy was over the hill. Sean Seven. I'm trying to think of who that guy was. Let me think.
It wasn't Hawthorne.
That's the linebacker from the that was a linebacker from Seattle we brought in, Hawthorne. Let me see.
Trying to think of the Dallas player.
I'll get him
Spencer.
Let's see, what is his name? No,
Spencer.
Yeah, Anthony Spencer. You're right. Yeah, he tore his ACL in training camp that year and never played it down. And I want to say that was in 2014. Oh man, this is getting frustrating. The guy, one of the guys that showed up on the list here was the linebacker they signed from the 49ers, Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton, yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see. Trying to see if there's anybody else on here. No, Victor Butler. That's who it was. Victor Butler. That was a linebacker we brought in from Dallas. And he was terrible. And we brought in Paris Harrelson to take his place. because Victor Butler tore his ACL in training camp.
ACL and
Yeah, back in 2014. There it goes again. Jeez. Yeah, Laurinaitis was another one that Chad brought up. So yeah, it's been a black hole for a long time. Let's just go with that. So,
well, I mean, how can you deny bringing in a linebacker that's the son of one of the Road Warriors? I mean, you got to go with history.
I know. then remember they signed that linebacker from the Carolina Panthers who had the concussion history. He was a good linebacker, but the Carolina Panthers let him go because he had too many concussions, and he never played it down for the Saints either because he realized I'm probably gonna get another concussion playing for this team. So, it's just been it's really, if you think about it, after the 1986 draft class, we never drafted good linebackers ever again. Pat Swilling was the last great linebacker, Pro Bowl linebacker the Saints ever drafted. I know Mark Fields went to the Pro Bowl, but I'm talking about a consistent great player. Pat Swilling was the last one. We got, and Bum Phillips drafted in the USFL draft. You could draft USFL players. The league allowed that because they knew they were on their last leg. So he drafted Vaughn Johnson. He drafted Ricky Jackson. And Jim Moore brought over Sam Mills from the USFL, because he had Sam Mills as his linebacker from the Philadelphia Stars. And Sam Mills beat out a former first-round draft pick of the Saints from 1985, Tennessee, Alvin Tolles in 86. He got beat out by Sam Mills. So I mean, it's funny that from 81 to 86, we bring in all these linebackers, do a good job. Doc Kovac, all these good linebackers that we brought in. You hit 1986. After that, it's crap. It really is. You run out of players, no matter where we got them from. They just were not good linebackers. So, it's really
either that or they were completely used up by the point that we got them.
Exactly. You got them. You got them. They were great players, but they were injured, and they never could. They weren't good, young, up-and-coming players. So, it's amazing. Of all the positions on this defense or on this team, we really have never been able to master getting a great linebacker. We've gotten good, not great corners, but corners that you can live with. We look like we've got some pretty good corners right now, but I mean, Tracy Porter and Jabari Greer were good, not great corners. Ashley Ambrose, the first time was a good corner, not a great one. We've had outstanding safeties, but we have never been able to get, since the Dome Patrol, consistent, great linebackers for multiple years. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating as anything.
It really is. And like I said, the linebacking core is going to always be the linchpin of your defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason why, and I just happened to be watching this the other day, but because yesterday was the 45th birthday of the Louisiana Superdome. It opened 45 years ago on August 3rd. I remember Channel 4, WWL TV, doing a special about the Superdome. It took you inside the dome, showed you like the suites where the concession stands were, the seats, the field, the locker rooms, all that stuff. They took you all behind the scenes in the dome and how it got built and everything. And for those of you who are my age, Sean's age, or around that age, you remember the
Had to throw
original.
me in. Had to throw me under that bus, didn't you?
Well, you had to be at least 45 years old, okay, so you could remember this.
Yeah, I don't.
But
If I could remember 45, I'd be a happy camper.
there you go. Well, the original seats for the Superdome were these ugly ass multicolored seats. They had a yellow. I'm not talking about the cheap seats, the gray ones. I'm talking about the in the plaza in the Loge level. They used to have there was a yellow back, and then like one seat had stripes on it, another one was purple, and then one was like red, and then another one had vertical stripes on it. They had every other seat was this color. And the reason why they did that, and this was said on the broadcast, the reason why they did that was for television purposes, to create the illusion that there were people in those seats, because you didn't have high definition television back then. So when they would show the crowd, the seats would look like people because all you saw was a blur back there. I mean, we grew up now with high definition television. I mean, that's what you have now. So you can see the guys, the people, in the stands cursing out the officials. You can see their mouths.
You can see a gnat's ass from the 50-yard line.
Exactly. But back then, you didn't get that kind of definition. And if you look at old Saints games, especially in the late 70s, early 80s, there's this tremendous amount of concrete that you can see around the field because the seats weren't as close. When they would have, like for the Superdome, they would bring in an extra section of seats, these metal section that would come out, and they had these chairs that was stackable that they were put in those seats. So if you watch like Super Bowl 12, the Denver Dallas Super Bowl, you can see the people, the NFL films footage. They show the people who sit in those seats. There were stackable chairs they put in there, and that's where you sat. But none of that stuff exists anymore. They've actually extended seating all the way down. But that's how it was done back then. So why I bring that up?
One of the last games that I went to was the Saints Panthers, and my seat was the very last level on the lowest level. So I was actually seated in the handicapped area. I had a replay monitor right up here over my head, but before the game, I got to walk down to the barricade and watch Drew do his warm-ups and all that. And it's every Saints player should have the opportunity to do that just once, or every Saints fan, should have the opportunity to experience that just once.
Well, if my brother's still on, he would remember this. My dad's seats from Tulane Stadium were translated. That was another nightmare. Was translated to what they used to call the opera seats. So there was a section of seating, and these are gone now too because they redid the scoreboards and everything. But it was a section of seating that came out next to the scoreboard. Well, you had a bar, and this goes with what Avery's saying. They had a bar that every, I guess half a row that's what hold that bar up, but there was nothing on that ledge but that bar. So you could put your hands and look over the edge. This is exactly what Avery's describing. And you're looking straight at the Loge level, which is the middle section, and then you had the plaza. Well, people would set their beers on these things. I can't tell you.
The funniest.
You'd knock beers down, full beers, and come crashing on
the funniest thing ever to me.
Wire, so you can't do it.
The funniest thing ever to me was the first Saints game that I went to. I went with my my pregnant ex-wife, and we met a security guard, and I said, "Hey, she's pregnant. Is there any way you can help us out?" And he took us up this flight of stairs and up this elevator, and he opens the door, and we're at the top of the Superdome, which is like 3 rows above our seats.
Yep.
And I walked out and I looked and I went, "Oh my God, if I fall, I won't stop until I hit grass."
Mm-hmm.
And but it was funny to me to sit there and watch these people that you could tell were like weekly participants in the Saints games. They would slip and trip and stumble and going down and coming back. They had like a shot in one hand and 2 beers in the other hand, and they never missed a beat. Never spilled a drop.
Nope. So it's fun looking, thinking about 45 years of the Superdome, and they took you on top. They opened up one of the panels. You looked straight down the field, and you could see how far it was down from there. They showed you the gondola, which doesn't exist anymore, but that's where the Mercedes-Benz logo is now.
Yeah.
But in fact, if I do this, you can still see. Yeah, that's where the gondola was. And the idea of the gondola was those screens. I've talked about this before. Everybody was supposed to get a 50-yard line seat. You could see the replay right there because it wasn't live action. It would just replay the plays and stuff. And
the Super Bowl between Patriots and Packers.
That was Super Bowl 30.
That was
31.
That was before the renovation. My sister actually danced at that. She was in the building when the accident occurred, that the person fell from the gondola to the floor.
Yeah. I was at the 1993 game against the 49ers, or it might have been 92. I don't remember which year it was. I want to say I'm almost positive it might have been the 92 season. That's where they set the fireworks off. They raised the gondola, put this metal like grating underneath it that you could safely walk on, I guess. Well, they had set up a set of fireworks there. So at halftime, they blew all these fireworks. All right. And the burlap, or they had stuff around it, that caught on fire. So some guy comes out there with a burlap sack. John Madden and Pat Summerall are all doing this game. So it's a 49ers Saints game. They're doing this game, and the guy is like trying to put this out with a burlap sack. Well, he sets the burlap on fire, and that's the huge piece that you see come down and lands on the field and everything else. So yeah,
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, that was an early '90s game. I'm pretty sure it was 19. It might have been 91. Might have been the 91 season. But anyway, that was a big deal. The fire underneath the gondola, and of course, one of the first years the Superdome was open, I want to say it was a 1976 Pro Bowl after the 76 season. That's the one that the Saints hosted the Superdome hosted the Pro Bowl. John Madden was the coach of the Pro Bowl team. And he's told Ray Guy, you almost hit that thing when you were doing your practice punt. He says, "Oh, I can hit it." And he showed it to him, and he boom, kicks it and bounces it off the gondola. And they were doing the same damn thing in the Jerry world. They were bouncing off the screen, punts and stuff.
Well, Jerry's world's different. That one's a lot closer than the gondola was.
Well, it's a lot lower. Yeah, it's a lot lower. But that was the first time you had something like that. And I used to always wonder if after Jerry's World put that huge screen up there, if the Saints would ever consider, or a Superdome commission would ever consider putting a big screen, but they put it on the back walls, but a big screen over the middle of the field where you could high definition, where you could see all that stuff on replay, because that would be pretty cool.
I've been to a couple of games in Jerry's World, and as much as I despise the Cowboys,
You're
as
probably
far
right.
as a game day experience,
You're probably right, Avery. It probably was anyone's season.
as much as I despise the Cowboys, as far as the game day experience goes, you'd be hard pressed to find a better one than Texas Stadium. It's really and for the most part, the fans are very accommodating. They're not like standoffish and challenging to everybody the way that you would expect. The first time that we went, I couldn't have asked for a better experience, and it was fantastic. The Saints won in overtime.
You got traitor. Chad calls you a traitor. Okay, so you see all this stuff here, all this green here at the bottom. That was all concrete back in the early '80s and the late '70s when the Superdome first opened. It's concrete underneath it too, but they now have turf, field turf that goes all the way to the end. So it was a lot different.
And as a player, let me elaborate on that just a touch. The AstroTurf that you see now is not the AstroTurf from the 80s, because I played on the AstroTurf from the 80s, and that's like catching a ball in a parking lot and taking off running and having 7 people attack you. It's pretty much the same thing.
For those of you who are old enough to remember these things, if you remember the welcome mat that you used to put in your front of your house, it was green. It had little flower, plastic flower in the upper corner. That's what that crap was. It was just like that. It was that. And the more you would run on it and stuff, the more it would get worn down and faded. I used to hate, of all the things that used to drive me crazy, I always thought the Superdome had, until later, until the 90s, I always thought the Superdome had crappy AstroTurf. The paint looked faded. Everything, it always looked faded on television. The numbers looked faded. And then you'd see the damn Cowboys in Texas Stadium, the original Texas Stadium, and they'd have those bright white numbers and bright white sidelines and striping. And I'm like, man, we look like a Mickey Mouse team compared to those bastards. I used to get mad about that stuff. The week one, the Saints logo, the helmet looked really bright, and the field looked good and everything else. But by like week 8, everything was faded. I'm like, you cheap bastards. Go out there and paint that damn thing a couple times. Then we stopped painting the end zone. We started just writing Saints, on the thing. They didn't paint it black anymore or gold or anything. That used to make me so mad because I'm like, man, those bastards in Dallas had the bright dark blue and they got Cowboys in silver and a huge star and everything would look good on TV. And we look like, some second-rate team. That was the kind of stuff that drove me crazy because, the team was bad enough. But, it's like, come on, man. In the 90s and the early 2000s, that was the only really say about the Ditka years. They really cleaned up and put new AstroTurf down. It looked nice. It looked bright. It looked new. Even as late as December, it still looked new. And the stuff they've got now, the field turf, that looks good too. Do you remember back in, I want to say 2003, the Saints tried real grass in the Superdome? Do you remember that? It was
I remember that. Yeah.
They brought in a field. It was an experiment because what Arizona does, they have a real grass field and they have a stadium. Yeah, the rooftop can open. But what they do is that field is like on a tray, like a basketball court, and that thing goes out in the sunshine and it will grow and everything else. They cut it and everything, and they bring it back in on these wheels to set in the in Arizona Stadium. So that field goes out and comes back in. So
the only field in the NFL that does that, actually.
Yeah. Well, it did say Tulane for years because Tulane had the lease. Um, but yeah, so they were going to try that in the Superdome, and it was nice to see a grass field, but it really wasn't practical. Field turf is probably about the best you could do. Um, but yeah, it was interesting the different things they've tried doing in the field. So oh my God. We're on our 85-inch TV screen. You poor bastard. They're looking at that ugly guy right there in the black jersey in high definition. Um,
How big is Allen's head on an 85-inch?
oh my
I'm just
God.
curious.
Probably giant size. Probably giant size. Um,
Y'all need to meet Allen in person because
there you
he's
go.
really much bigger than he appears on screen.
Yeah, objects. I should have a little warning in anything. Objects this size are larger than they actually appear. Yeah, that would be good. Um,
Well, the
so
reverse is true for me. So
so
I'm 5'6.5" and 180 pounds. So
I believe I was going back now. I've talked about the Superdome enough. I think we go back to training camp. Um, I asked a question earlier to people, and we talked a little bit about it last week. The Saints still have a hole at wide receiver. Now, letting Tommy Lee Lewis go, which a lot of people were happy to see happen because they're sick of that guy, it's still a challenge for the young players to step up and fill that fourth or fifth receiving slot. Emmanuel Butler, the guy from last year. Yeah, I bet. Waiting for a woman with a sledgehammer to smash it.
that sounds like a conversation that I don't need to be a part of.
Yeah. Nah.
Well, Calvin, get in playing shape and get your ass to New Orleans. Well, I've been telling you that for weeks.
So
you make the team. I'm your agent. Here we go.
There you go. So, they're clearly going to be looking at these young guys. They're not talking about. They've not brought in a single veteran receiver. They signed some guy from I think the Giants. He was on the Giants roster, practice squad player.
Yeah.
But he's really more of a camp body. I think they're really going to try and give these these young players. Yeah, here we go. These young players a shot. So who are you excited probably the most? Yeah, the old Apple commercial. That was the 1984 commercial.
Super Bowl commercial.
That is why Super Bowl commercials cost so much now because of that Apple commercial from 1984. Who are you?
I think that they're placing. I don't want to say unfounded. I think that they're placing a hell of a lot of trust in Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah,
that he's going to step up. And they're in a position now where they're going to have to depend on a lower level player to step up. Now, who that'll be remains to be seen.
Well, it's funny. We talked about the linebackers and how they try to bring in linebackers and how much trouble they've had bringing in linebackers. But receivers have been just the opposite issue. They've been able to squeeze out fans aren't happy, but they were able to squeeze out some quality years out of a guy like Brandon Coleman or Lance
Marcus
Moore.
Colston.
Marcus Colston got a career out of that guy, but I mean, even first.
Well, I mean, he was almost Mr. Irrelevant, and he managed to set every benchmark in receiving for the franchise. So,
right.
Nobody saw that coming.
No.
Nobody wanted Marcus Colston, and Sean Payton saw something in him, invested in him, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm
But
saying.
no one since then has stepped up to that level. Lance Moore filled a void, and he was something that they desperately needed at the time, but he was never going to be your number one or number two. He just wasn't that player.
No, but I mean, he gave a year where in 2008 where he had a good season. So that was a guy you can get 1 or 2 years out of some of these guys, and the Saints' attitude is, well, we're just bringing somebody else. We're not asking somebody to be the franchise. We've got the franchise receiver now. You've got, you've got Michael Thomas. That's your franchise receiver. But they just want guys who will step up consistently for a season and have an impact. And they don't care who it is or where they come from. And it's, they've been lucky over the past 14 to 15 seasons where they have found enough pieces to put together. I mean, I've bitched about it, but they found enough guys they can put pieces together and find guys that can produce at least for a season to get you where you need to go. I mean, Willie Snead's a great example. Willie Snead for a season, maybe 2 seasons, he was like the poor man's Lance Moore. Okay. He was catching everything to get the first down. And then he gets a DWI and he doesn't ever come back from that. But regardless, you got 2 seasons production out of him. Unfortunately, we didn't have that great of a team around him, but you got enough production out of him that you weren't stressing out about, hey, we lost Lance Moore, we lost Marcus Colston. Who is Breeze going to throw to? There's always somebody shows up. So
anytime anybody gives me an argument on the validity of Willie Snead, I always tell them, look at that playoff game in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it's 4th down. Who does Breeze go to? Willie Snead.
Absolutely. So I think Calvin's got a legitimate point. Calvin brings up, Deontay Harris. He has a good shot of being that 4th guy, that speed guy. You probably get him on the opposite side of Emmanuel Sanders, and you've got something. I wish Traquan Smith would show something. I don't think he's going to. So
I don't either.
That's the issue I have right now. I'm good with Michael Thomas. I'm actually good with Emmanuel Sanders. It's the guy who has to be the 3rd receiver. I don't think Harris is your 3rd receiver. I think he's your 4th receiver. I think you can finagle something with Taysom Hill, but I don't like the idea of Taysom Hill being your number 3 receiver.
Well, I think that you have to bear in mind that Deontay Harris is your return game, and you're not going to compromise that for a number 3 or number 4 receiver.
Mm-hmm. So
you can't afford to.
So that probably means that you are going to compensate by putting Jared Cook in the slot. You're going to put him on outside the numbers sometimes. You're going to use probably Kamara sometimes as a slot receiver or an outside receiver, and Taysom Hill. You're going to be doing combination things if
receiver by committee.
Yeah, if no one else shows up. And the Saints are comfortable with that. I don't feel comfortable with that, but the Saints are comfortable with that. So, and it's just scary. I'm not sure.
The only thing that I'm not comfortable with is using Alvin Kamara as a receiver, because you're going to need him so much more in the ground game.
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to see what Troutman brings. Obviously, coming from a small school the way that he did, a great coach like Sean Payton saw something in him. I'm interested to see how that's going to pan out and play out.
Well, Chad mentions Ty Montgomery. I think Ty Montgomery has a good shot at making this team. I want to see him make the team first before I start picturing where to put him. I think Ty Montgomery would be a great receiver / running back. And taking some of the pressure and the hits off of Taysom Hill.
See, that's going to be the thing at wide receiver. You can pencil in this one and you can think about that one, but until you see who actually makes the roster beyond a Michael Thomas, beyond an Emmanuel Sanders, beyond Jared Cook, beyond those three players, I would say you have no idea who's going to be there come week one. You've just got to let it play out.
And unfortunately, we won't get to see any of them because there's no preseason. So this is the downside. Not that I like going to preseason games, not that I like watching preseason games, but preseason games do serve a purpose, and that is
it's football.
You get to watch. In fact, my wife mentioned that the other day. She said, "You realize that this weekend we probably would have the Hall of Fame game?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably right. We probably get the Hall of Fame. Well, it might have been last weekend. Would have been the Hall of Fame game, and then this weekend. Oh, been this weekend. Okay,
yeah.
But yeah, you would have had the Hall of Fame game, and then you had preseason games to look forward to. And you're not going to see that.
I got to give out props to the big number 94. For Cam Jordan. For doing his interview the other, may have been today, yesterday, somewhere in there. And they asked him about Tom Brady. They asked him about Tom Brady, and he said, "Hey, he's the second best quarterback in history."
Yep. Second best quarterback in our division, too. Well, have you seen his NFL Top 100 video where they talked to him? They said, they asked him first off, who do you think is the best player in football? And he points at himself. That's how he starts the thing. And then he says, well, it's kind of an ego blow. You don't get to see yourself in the top, number one guy. So he says, he starts talking about the things he's done. And he says, they interview a Falcons player, and he says, man, that guy Cam Jordan, he destroyed us on Thanksgiving. And then they go to Cam Jordan, and Cam Jordan says, Matt Ryan's really been good to me over the years. So he sacked him 18 times over the, over his career.
No quarterback in the league has been sacked by the same player more than Matt Ryan has been sacked by Cam Jordan.
Yep, and he talked about the 4-sack performance he had on Sunday night. And he said his favorite sack was the final sack, the sack of the final play of the game, where he sacks Matt Ryan on 4th down, and he ends it and he says, "Yeah, I have to say that's my favorite sack because not only." Was it my 4th sack of the game? It was the sack that ends the game. So, yeah, them dirty birds, they ain't going to rise up today. So he just straight trolls the NFC South, and it's really, really enjoyable to watch. It's Cam Jordan. Not Cam Newton. I'm waiting for him to make comments about Cam Newton too, but Cam Jordan is. He is probably going to break Ricky Jackson's sack record. Assuming that we play 16 games this season, he'll probably break it next year, unless he has, a Pat Swilling, Leroy Glover kind of season where he gets 17 or more sacks. Because I think he is like 25 or close, not quite 30. Sacks behind Ricky Jackson. So
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's I couldn't ask for a greater ambassador for this team, and the fact that he gives
He
props
was
to
Calvin. Yeah. Calvin says,
the
it was Grady Jarrett of the Falcons, and yes, it was him.
yeah. Well, anyway, um, the fact that he gives props to Drew when he could very well turn the spotlight on himself, that speaks volumes towards the kind of man that Cam Jordan really is.
No, he's going to go down as one of the cornerstones of this franchise, and then he will be on
Absolutely.
every anniversary team, probably
Yeah.
for the with a Walton Johnson Saints broadcast. Well, thank you. I'm not quite Billy Ed, but I can do that. And Mr. Kenneth and Mr. O.
I'm not really sure how to process that.
Oh, I love Walton Johnson. I've talked about this before. Walton Johnson originated in New Orleans back in 1983. I don't know if you know this or not. Walton Johnson, I think I've said this on the show before. If you buy the 45, and I'm going to have to go dig it out and I'm going to show it on the show one day. You buy the 45 of Who Dat with the Singing Saints, and that is the Saints. I have talked about this before. You flip that record over, and it's a Walton Johnson thing. It's the Q. Who Dat say going to beat that Q crew? Because that's what they used to call themselves, the Q Morning Crew. And Steve Johnson is the guy who does all the voices. Steve Johnson used to do a Kenny Stabler all the time. So yeah, it's they'd have Kenny Stabler talk about the Saints games on Mondays and Fridays, the last game and the upcoming game. You used to get to hear that on the Walton Johnson show. You had the old storyteller who would always tell the dirty jokes right before the bottom of the hour at 7:30. I'd hear that right when I get to school in high school. And then the old story guy. And this is by far I'll never forget this joke. This is the final thing. Since Anna brought this up, we'll end this with a Walton. Oh yeah, Marcus Dupree. Piece of there. Marcus Dupree. Yeah, he would do Marcus Dupree too from the New Orleans Breakers when we had the Breakers that year.
And where did Marcus go to college?
Yes, OU. He was a Sooner Boomer. Yep. But this is the joke that Walton Johnson told. And back then, okay, I'll have to tell you these people are. Angela Hill was the female reporter, newscaster on WWL Channel 4. Lynn Ganser was on Channel 6 WVUE, and Sherry Bernardi was the news girl on WQUE. That was doing the news while Walton and Johnson were in the studio doing their thing. So he tell the joke, and he says, one day, and this is the old story, guys, telling Uncle Festus from Gunsmoke, if you are that old and remember this. He says, Angela Hill, Lynn Gans, and Sherry Bernardi are sitting on a park bench in Jackson Square, and Angela, and they're all reminiscing about the days. They're long since retired, reminiscing about the days when they were in the news and what they did and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, a guy comes in a trench coat. He's a flasher, and he flashes Angela Hill, and she has a stroke. And John Walton's going, "Oh my God!" And then he flashes Lynn Ganser, which is how he would say her name. And Lynn Ganser had a stroke. Yeah. I was wondering if people will remember who Uncle Festus was. But anyway, she'd have a stroke. And then he flashed Sherry Bernardi, and then John Walton said, "Oh my God, don't tell me she had a stroke too." And he's like, "No, her arms weren't long enough." And then, that was the joke. And they'd say, "Oh, we got the shoe beaten on the glass. That's how mad she is about that joke. We got a good one." So yeah. That was.
I was never much on Walton and Johnson, but I used to religiously listen to John Boy and Billy.
Oh, see, that wasn't in. I didn't get to hear those guys. That wasn't in our area. Um, Walton and Johnson went national not long after that, and that's when they left WQE, went to Houston, came back to New Orleans, went to Houston for good. Yeah, Cajun Ken Cooper on B97. He got in trouble because he said "coon ass" on the radio, and somebody reported in the
I got
FCC.
I got kicked out of school for wearing a T-shirt that said "Registered Coon Ass, State of Louisiana." They
That's
kicked
a
me out of my
license
school
plate.
for that.
That's a license plate. Uh, uh it's amazing what the things you freak out about today. It's just,
Yeah.
but yeah, I remember those license plates. But yeah, that was Walton and Johnson, and they have always been big Saints fans, and they do voices and stuff. And the thing they do right now, even though it's Kenny instead of John Walton, he passed away over a year ago. Um, the big thing they do right now is they get Coach O from LSU come on and talk about. That's exactly
Go
what
ahead.
you hear. You hear, go Tigers,
Go,
go Tigers.
go Tigers.
Yep, that's what you would hear. That's basically the
I actually watched Ed Orgeron make his screen debut last night.
Did you have the closed captioning on?
No,
Because there's
he was I don't know how many takes that it took, but he was actually coherent and legible in The Blind Side.
Oh, yeah, I did see him in The Blind Side. Yeah, I do remember that. That's when he was with Ole Miss, and of course, Nick Saban was in at LSU at the time.
Yeah, Nick Saban. Did I say that wrong? Was at LSU. Tommy Tuberville was at.
He went to Ole Miss. He was at Auburn.
Auburn.
Yep.
And
you still had Fulmer with Tennessee.
Yeah, and the senile bastard was still at South Carolina.
Lou Holtz.
Lou Holtz. Yeah. That's actually a great movie.
My wife watched it 1,000 times, and her favorite line in that is, "You might be going to LSU because that Nick Saban's a good-looking guy." With the what's her name?
I'm standing right here.
Yeah, that's it.
Tim McGraw.
But no, I can't think of her name right now.
Sandra Bullock.
Sandra Bullock. Yeah, she said that.
Nah.
All right.
She's hot as a blonde, though, dude.
Oh yeah, well, she was hot in Speed too, and she's hot in most of the films she's in. Okay, so it's interesting
that went sideways awfully quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just not going to lie. I mean, she was. I watched Speed. As bad as that movie was, I watched Speed purely for Sandra Bullock. I'm not going to deny that.
I think maybe if not The Blind, well, The Blind Side probably is her best job as an actress. But one of the movies that she's in that I consider one of the best movies ever is
she has been
A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey,
Kevin
Spacey. Yeah, it's based on the John Grisham novel, and it is absolutely amazing. A great movie.
Yep. Okay, so it's funny that you mentioned that we're going to have Kyrie Robinson on the show, and we ended the show talking about free agents because Kyrie Robinson obviously made the team in, what was it, 2015? No, 2013. He made the team in 2013 because he scored in the Seattle playoff game. But he made the team basically because of his performance in that final preseason game, that fourth preseason game. He really showed.
Well, he led the team in rushing.
Yes,
in the entire preseason.
I thought he beat out Travaris Cadet for a roster spot. I was surprised they kept both of them. But
the only reason that I saw that they kept Cadet was for special teams.
And
I considered Kyrie to be saved as a running back along with Pierre Thomas, but
Yeah.
Cadet I saw as a special teams player.
Right. And he was a pass catching running back, which, they had just traded Sproles. No, they were going to trade Sproles in 2014. So they hadn't traded him yet, but they were planning on grooming Cadet to replace Sproles, which that was a stupid decision, but that's neither here nor there. That's back then. But yeah, you had Thomas, you had Sproles, you still had Chris Ivory, I think was still on the team, or they may have traded him that offseason. I think they traded him.
No, he was still here.
He was still there in 2013, you sure?
There was one season, if I'm not too bad mistaken, where we had Thomas, Cadet, Ivory, Robinson, and Sproles.
I think we traded him to the Jets in 2013 because we still had Ingram on the team. So in 2011, you had Ingram, Ivory, Sproles, and Thomas. You carried that over to 2012 with no Sean Payton. They made the decision to get rid of, I think, Ivory, because that's how he ended up with 29, because that was Ivory's number. They traded Ivory in the 2013 offseason, and Kyrie Robinson was seen as, at least Christian Garrick said it, as another Chris Ivory, a mini Chris Ivory. So, when they kept him and Cadet, I was surprised. I really was. I thought they'd let Cadet go with Thomas, Sproles, Ingram, and Robinson. I mean, we had 5 running backs and a fullback and 4 tight ends, I think.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. It was a bizarre.
Well, we didn't have any wide receivers, so
yeah,
I mean,
it was just a bizarre setup. I mean, it really was, but that's how they did stuff, and that's how he made the team. So yeah, next week when we have Kyrie on, that's one of the things I do want to talk to him about was what it was like to be in that big of a running back room, and you're sitting there counting carries and snaps. How are you going to be able to, how did you see yourself fitting in this running back room with all these other backs that needed touches? What could you do on this team? And so that I'm interested in talking about that. So anyway,
I hated to see the day that I forget who the opponent was, but when he broke his leg the last time, compound fracture. But I mean, that to me, that's an iconic photo where all the players were around him, holding his hands and praying for him at the same time.
Absolutely.
I still, somewhere on my phone, I have that picture. But like I said, personal reasons.
Yep.
Next week is going to be very, very special for me.
Well, good deal. So that's what we have to look forward to next week. Hopefully we at least have some information on training camp and what's been going on. I'm worried that we shouldn't have any COVID issues during training camp, but I'm concerned about that. It's really if this regular season starts, I think that's what we have to watch for it. So in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. Sean, you have any last words tonight?
Thank you guys for joining us on Under the Dome. Since I never paid the bills at the beginning, I'll do so now. You can follow us on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter by the handles that you see before you at this moment. We love you guys. We thank you so very much for being a part of what we do. And who dat, baby?
All right. Thank you guys. And I'll try and dig up some more ancient history about the Saints. I'll bring my Who Dat record next time, and I know exactly where it is. I'll pull it out and I'll show you guys the Who Dat record. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.